So before we get started, we'd love to share our rap song introduction video, and we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, okay, organic base, this is what you need. Take you to the future, live a life that can be disease free. All these toxins are taxing on our bodies, no doubt. All these GMOs and these processed foods we can live without. Yeah, wanna see you live a long time. Contaminants in our water and our food supply. From the meat to the dairy and the fish, what a shame. Not realizing that my insides were inflamed. Hold up, I know it's hard to digest, that's right. I found an organic plant-based website. I even got the app, yo, this is where it's at. Promoting a healthy life, it's time to put it on the map. Assuaged, trust you don't wanna miss. It's time for you to be your best, be your healthiest. Assuaged, trust you don't wanna miss. It's time for you to be your best, be your healthiest. Hey, Assuaged, let's go.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our team of students today. We will be covering domestic violence. Know the signs. We'd like to thank our partner, Restream, for supporting our student team. Restream's powerful multi-platform streaming capabilities have broadened our reach, connecting us with diverse communities across various social media platforms. Our message of public health and wellness now reaches those who need it most. Thank you so much, Restream. We'd like to thank our student speakers today, Aysha Rahman, Lydia Fox, Madison Clark, and myself, Cynthia Murphy. Slide contributors is Tolulope Adebile, Allie Huskey, Soleil Zamora, Shiloh Touby, and Aysha Rahman. Today on the agenda, we have Section 1, Domestic Violence, the definition, types, common signs, and reasons for abusing. Section 2 is going to cover the impact of domestic violence, children, physical, emotional, mental, and economic. Section 3 is prevalence and prevention. And finally, Section 4 is legal rights, support, and resources.
What is domestic violence? Abusive patterns of behavior used by one to maintain power and control over another. Domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, technological threats. It can be behavior that intimidate, manipulate, isolate, scare, terrorize, threaten, blame, hurt, or injure. Types of domestic violence. Types of domestic violence include physical violence, such as hitting, kicking, slapping, punching, beating, choking, etc. It also includes sexual violence, such as rape, forcing someone to engage in sexual acts without consent, forcing someone to view pornography, stalking, uninvited attention, causing an individual to fear for their safety and feel uncomfortable, unwanted phone calls, spying, watching from a distance, threatening. Psychological aggression include mentally, emotionally harm or control someone. Common signs of abusive behavior in a partner. Visible injuries includes bruises or injuries such as choking, punching, black eyes, marks around the neck that attempt to cover up with heavy makeup or with clothing by the victim. A large amount of control. Controls what you are doing, checks your phone, email, or social networks without your permission, controlling household finance without decision. Lack of respect. Humiliates you on purpose in front of others unfairly accuses you of being unfaithful, trapped and unhappy, impeding decision making at work or school, and discouraging social interaction with friends and family. Why do people abuse? Difficulty tolerating injury includes never having learned to deal with hurt feelings without punishing someone else for the hurt. It could be entitlement has grown accusation to thinking his feelings are more important than those of other people. Lack of empathy. Empathy enables understanding feelings of others. Meaningful connections are difficult to make. Lack of accountability. If left unchecked, an abuser will continue doing the same thing simply because he or she can. It is easier to continue than to make changes. Unaddressed trauma. Abuser may have grown up in high conflict families. They also may have been abused or witnessed frequent abuse. Physical, emotional, and mental effect of domestic violence. Physical bruises, welts, and black eyes, cuts, lacerations and wounds, fracture, broken bones and dislocations, internal injuries, bleeding, chronic pain, and soreness. Emotional includes confusion, fear, anger, sadness, hopelessness, shame, guilt, loneliness. Mental includes self-critical, destructive, suicidal, struggle with emotional regulations, trouble reading social cues, anxiety, insomnia. The effects of domestic violence on children varies with the age, and short terms includes preschool age. Children who witness domestic violence may have sleep problems, fear signs such as slaughtering or hiding, and severe separation anxiety. School age includes children in this age range may blame themselves for the abuse, leading to self-esteem issues, academic and social difficulties, and physical symptoms like headaches and stomach aches. Teenage who witness abuse may engage in risky behaviors and struggle with self-esteem and social relationships.
So, the effects of domestic violence on children long term. Over 15 million US children live in homes where domestic violence has occurred, increasing their risk of repeating the cycle as adults. Growing up in a violent household can lead to adverse behaviors and emotions in children. They might abuse themselves, respond violently to threats at school or at home, have anxiety and depression, attempt suicide, have poor social skills, use drugs or abuse alcohol, enter into abusive relationships later on, which repeats the cycle, or develop eating disorders. Economic impact of domestic violence. According to CDC, the cost of domestic violence is over $9 billion US dollars. 70% of this cost is spent on direct healthcare services. Domestic violence also costs employers nearly 13 billion USD due to missed work days. Missed amount of work days in 1 year totals to roughly 8 million days. Victims of domestic violence often experience economic abuse such as financial exploitation and control. Examples include allowances, control of bank accounts, taking and keeping income, and creating debt. The National Youth Survey reported that employed adolescents who were victims of domestic violence earned $1 less than non-victims, which could be associated with low education status and employment status. Prevalence of domestic violence. Low-income households have a higher rate of domestic violence when compared to higher-income households. 1 in 3 women, 37%, and 1 in 4 men, 31%, reported encounters with violence. Examples include sexual violence, physical violence, or stalking committed by an intimate partner. Nearly half of women, 48.4%, and men, 48.8%, report experiencing psychological aggression by an intimate partner during their lifetime. Prevalence of domestic violence continued. 30 to 60% of intimate partner violence offenders also abuse children in the household. Children exposed to domestic violence are 15 times more likely to be physical and or sexually abused. On average of 24 people a minute are victims of domestic violence, which accounts for nearly 12 million people over the course of a year. Prevention strategies. So, to prevent this from happening, we can teach safe and healthy relationship skills, strengthen economic support for families, support survivors to increase safety and less harms, and create protective environments.
Prevention strategies. Stop the problem before it starts. Certain behaviors can indicate a problem. Examples are jealousy, controlling, manipulation, and intimidation. Educate yourself on available resources and what your rights are. Established and acknowledged boundaries for both parties is necessary. Legal rights for domestic violence victims in the U.S. A federal domestic violence victim has the following rights under 42 U.S.C. Section 1. The right to a fair and respectful treatment of the victim's dignity and privacy. 2. The right to be reasonably protected from the accused offender. 3. The right to be notified of court proceedings. 4. The right to be present at all public court proceedings unless it materially affects the victim's testimony. 5. The right to confer with the attorney for the government in the case. 6. The right to restitution. 7. The right to information on the offender's conviction, sentencing, imprisonment, and release. Signal for help, a universal sign. It was originally created as a tool to combat the rise in domestic violence cases around the world as a result of the self-isolation measures related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The signal is performed by holding your hand up with your thumb tucked into your palm, then folding your fingers down, symbolically trapping your thumb in your fingers. Since its introduction in 2020, the hand signal has been recognized by over 40 organizations as a signal for help. The steps to do this gesture is 1. Palm facing out, tucked thumb. 2. Closed fist, trap thumb. Support and care for survivors of domestic violence. Domestic violence service providers may offer several different types of services, which can include counseling for emotional trauma, depression, anxiety, PTSD, self-harm, or other mental health needs. Legal support for survivors, for instance, if their partner has been arrested. Financial management programs to promote financial independence from abusers. Employment training and support. Special programs for children who may have witnessed domestic abuse. Available resources. National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-787-3224 for text to, not sure what that abbreviation is, or text start to 88788 or http://www.thehotline.org. Continuum of Care, COC, Homeless Assistance Program, Help with Housing. Continuum of Care, COC, Homeless Assistance Program, benefits.gov. National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, 1-800-537-2238 or http, not sure that's the right link. It's on the slide.
Thank you so much, Lydia, and for the rest of the students that covered those slides. We are now going to turn our cameras on and start to answer some of these questions. So the first one we have are, who are the victims of domestic violence? Domestic violence can affect anyone, regardless of social class, education, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, religion, gender, including married couples and those dating or cohabiting. Women are most impacted by domestic violence, with around 1 in 3 experiencing abuse at some point in their lives. However, many men also experience unreported abuse from their partners, with 1 in 9 enduring severe physical violence, leading to harm and fear. So, what do you have to weigh in on, Aisha? We'll start with you, my dear.
Sure, yeah. I think this is the most frequent questions being asked, who are the victim of domestic violence? So obviously, is women, because women are the most, affected by the domestic violence in almost all nations. But not only women, children are also suffer the most in patriotic world due to masculine toxicity. So I believe that both women and children both are suffering and become a victim of domestic violence. And yeah, and then men, of course, we in the question there's answer. Men's also suffer, also become a victim of domestic violence, but they are being unnoticed. But maybe they are not as, they are not suffering from the domestic violence as much more than women. Women are more noticeable because they are apparent because when the physical abuse start, the appearance shows, bruises. Maybe you have, women are so emotional that they cry out to their parents or friends or neighbors. So this is how they're being, treated, like they are being treated as the, they should be being taken actions towards them of not being, abused by men. So this is how I believe. So overall, yeah, women. It's all over the world. Overall, I would say.
Absolutely. Domestic violence is actually something I have a lot of experience with, personally, with seeing my sister go through tremendous abuse, and she went back every time. I also did, I think, like 120 hours of training for Doves, which is a domestic violence nonprofit in the Big Bear Lake area. So I actually escorted women to safe houses. I went to court with them, and 9 times out of 10 they always went back to their abuser. They'd let them know where they were at the shelter. It was kind of devastating, and making that effort to get them away from that abuse, and then seeing them surrender in such a way, almost as if they were defeated. No one else would love them. They had no chance to have a life elsewhere. And the one thing I did notice is many men were being abused, but rarely stepping up to, claim that victimization, didn't want to be, in that category. It could be embarrassing. So I felt like working in the field for a while, it was very intimidating for me. I just felt like some of these men, which most of the abusers were men, very intimidating. And I could see why these women would, succumb and surrender to that. So it's so common, and it's so hard to get out. And for us that don't have experience with it, and sitting here and sometimes passing judgment, like, well, why don't they leave, and how stupid. And it really goes further beyond that. There's a sense of control, as these slides covered very comprehensively. Madison, what would you like to add to that, my dear?
I would say, I mean, yeah, everyone, a lot of people are affected, women and children and men. And as y'all said, it's women are more primarily highlighted in that area. But I mean, it's not known if men are abused in the same way, but don't step forward. Um, as well as kids, I know there's several, I mean, children that will protect their abusers just like women protect their abusers. Sometimes kids are abused, but they protect their parents. And sometimes, CPS will get involved and they will, straight up say they're doing fine, that their home life is great because they don't want to, get their parents in trouble. And then they go right back home to that abusive situation. So I think it's all about, trying to get people to come forward and admit they need help rather than save who is abusing them, because it's always this, you don't know if they're scared of what's going to happen if they admit the truth, or if they're just, too scared to hurt another person because they're being hurt themselves. It's one of those situations. It's really sad.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
Lydia, do you have anything to weigh in on, my dear? I know you said you don't really have much experience here, but you might have some thoughts.
Well, I only have a couple thoughts actually, because one thing that I tend to notice, especially when the topic of children comes up and parenting techniques related to that, is culture and the the debate of whether violence should be justified based upon someone's culture rather than their safety, a human being, which is something very difficult. And in fact, I currently have a neighbor in which is a issue, but also because of the laws in my state, what they're doing is technically perfectly legal. So, but there's also that culture deal there, so it can get very complicated very fast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. So we will go to the next slide. What can we do to help? This is question number 2. Everyone can speak out against domestic violence. Every person can take an individual action to create a supportive community for survivors. Members of the public can donate to local, statewide, or national anti domestic violence programs or victim assistance programs. You can call on your public officials to support life saving domestic violence services and hold perpetrators accountable. That's another one to, there's so many resources, and the best we can do as people that are, we're not necessarily living in it, but, we might have family members, friends, is just be supportive and provide those resources, and not spare that judgment, because there's so much of that, and that's what really deters people from admitting or speaking out to begin with. Aisha, what do you think, my dear?
Yes, absolutely. I do agree with the fact that I think family is the one of the most closest supportive boundaries that we could have. If anyone is feeling unsafe with their partner, they should go if parents not available, obviously friends are could be a source to get the help, or if it's friends not available, neighbors all, you can go to neighbor. And another thing I noticed when I was, it's very interesting, when I was doing research and when I'm going to website, the box popped up say if you are feeling unsafe, and if you think you're visiting this site and your spouse, somehow your spouse has access to your internet, a laptop or cell phone, so you can contact us, we can remove the history you know so yeah, so it's very safe. If another thing they can do, if it's using local computer or local, going to library, asking for help, is very, is safe. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Madison, what do you think, my dear?
I think asking for help, one of the things that my doctor's office even used to do is, no matter your age, when I went to the doctor, at least, they would ask the parent to leave the room. And they would immediately just be like, how's your home life? If something's up, you can always tell your doctor, because they actually have, the police usually thereby, like nearby, or even on the premises of the hospital. So sometimes I even had friends like that. They would just like, pretend to be sick. And if you go to the doctor, you can tell your pediatrician or whoever you're seeing that you don't feel safe at home. And usually they can have someone, like an official, actually handle it on hospital grounds. So that's someone you can also trust in, besides like neighbors, families, and friends, is actually reaching out to like your healthcare provider as well.
That's a great tip. Thank you so much for sharing. Lydia, did you have anything to weigh in on?
Uh, well, not really, although I suppose maybe one group that may be underreached is because this kind of seems to be oriented towards like very social people. Like a lot of the solutions for like reporting and identification of things are for people that are very social and understand their emotions well and stuff. So I think education on understanding oneself in those ways and things that target people that may be less social and maybe more online or whatever might be some good things to develop because I don't really see those too frequently.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So, third question: how can you know an abuser? Abusers cannot be judged by their appearance. However, certain signs may indicate that someone is an abuser. These signs include aggression, short temper, anger towards others, refusal to take responsibility, blaming others, raising their voices, and seeking dominance. Um, so one thing that I will add on that, and just seeing abuse firsthand with my sister going through it, is that there's that charisma that some of these abusers have. Very kind and nice, and they just have a personality full of life. And then there's that other side that you don't necessarily see. A lot of it can start with isolating the victim from their family, finding reasons why your family, you shouldn't have them in your life. And they might move far, or create those barriers to where you don't have a support system. I typically see that's where it really stems from. And if you go further into it and you watch the movie, what's love got to do with it, about Tina Turner. She just passed away. She's a wonderful artist. But that was a terror story that she went through, the abuses by Ike Turner. And there are other video movies out there that are true stories that showcase what domestic violence looks like. And yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of personalities that come along with the persona and the type of person that would be the abuser. So sometimes it's hard to see, but these are common traits. Aisha, what do you think, my dear?
Um, there's a famous quote saying that you cannot judge a book by its cover. Yeah, it's the same situation applied to the abuser. Like you said, Cynthia, a person can be very nice and most wonderful person in the face of the earth, but they could be they have a sign of the autism. Sorry, but they have a large, like you said, they have must be nice, but you don't know when the person, the abuser. So it's very important for women to notice, observe and recognize those signs if they're dating. Or maybe dating with a man, or all in early, especially in early stage of marriage. I think is best for them to recognize those signs. That's what type of abuse they should, like Lydia said about the education. Yes, I obviously agree with that. The institution can provide those education in early age with for the children. So that will they will be. They will know. They will be more educated about the domestic violence and not become a victim of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Madison?
Um, I don't. I think everything Jayashree said was good. It's obviously like sometimes, like you said, it's hard to notice right away. I had a family friend as a kid who went through it, and like their dad was super kind in public, but you could tell, and like in your gut you knew too, like the mom was like never speaking, she was never out at the event, she was always home, she was living on like a controlled allowance. And when you'd go over to their house, I mean, she was never out socializing because she was just like kept separate from everyone. He kind of isolated her and made her just stay at home and just stay by herself. And then, you could tell that she was very upset. And then when the dad would leave and it was like my friend and I and the mom, like she would totally come out in the living room and hang out. But, as soon as the dad came home, it was different. You could feel it. It's just one of those things where sometimes you have to really you have to really know the family or know the person to know what's going on, because out in public, like you said, they might be like super kind, and then you get into their atmosphere and you see what happens behind closed doors, and it's like a little switch, it's different.
Yeah. There's this family that was just exposed, I think like 2 years ago, right down the hill from us in Riverside, the Turpin family. They had, I think, 12 or 13 of their children locked up in the house, and one of them escaped. And, she had no idea what the world was even like. She had just been sheltered and locked and abused in this home. So there are so many things happening behind closed doors that, we have not a clue about. And those are revelations that continuously come. Lydia, what do you think, my dear?
Well, not much, except I do agree with the fact that a lot of times abusers can hide behind the nice and sweet to everyone persona, and build a lot of social credit in that way. Like, I know of some extended family and a friend or two that disclosed information of abuse, and the people that were known as abusers in those cases fit that description perfectly, of being the nice, sweet person that everybody thinks is awesome. So, yeah, I think that's something to be very careful of, especially if someone seems just kind of too nice all the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. We have one more slide, one more question. How can you stop domestic abuse in homes? As a spouse or partner, you should watch for signs of an abusive spouse and seek help immediately. Encouraging your spouse to attend therapy and anger management classes can be effective. Consider visiting a marriage counselor if the issue persists long after marriage. Additionally, parents should avoid fighting or using abusive language or actions in front of children to prevent them from becoming abusers themselves. I definitely can see how that could happen with children just seeing and living experiences. And the cycle of abuse continues, generational traumas, not knowing any better from what they were raised in, those kind of environments. What do you think, Aisha?
So nothing much. It's just that, like, if a woman, if someone's going through, um, you know, abusive, if you have abuse at home, like, you know, calling your friend or maybe discussing with your family the best way um, to get help, I believe. Yeah, I think I cannot find any other way. I think those people are close to that person, whoever going through this domestic violence. If you cannot share, in most culture, I never been to the situation, but not even my immediate family, not even my uncles or anything, but I'm blessed with that. But yeah, I believe that families is the most important. I think family is the most um, source, like helping hand source, rather than, yeah, I think I can say it.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Madison?
I think just always being someone that can offer to help, because as you said, sometimes it can be like heartbreaking when you try to help someone and they run back to that situation. So I think just always being there and offering the support and being there as much as possible is something you can do, and offer them outlets, and just try to, help your friends, help your family. If you see it, say something, and of course mention, how that can be unhealthy. And that's all you can pretty much do, is just try to be there for anyone that needs it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Lydia, you'd be the last to provide any kind of feedback before we hop off here?
Well, considering this point in particular and how much county is involved with it, that targeting therapy avoidance could be a major help for this, because like it seems with the culture as it is currently, we get more information thrown at us about how a Roomba works or what toppings Pizza Hut has. Like if we had those kind of same levels of knowledge about these kind of aids, then I think things would improve quite a bit. Like even if they took on typical advertising strategy, or just even a little brochure at a doctor's office, I think could be quite helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing. This was definitely a reflective conversation. You guys did an excellent job preparing the slides. Thank you for doing that. Throughout the presentation, we have showcased the name of the students as well as some resources, including the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Thank you so much for joining our student team, and we look forward to serving you once again on our next topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.